got rid of Sherry.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Attorney General Kris Mayes. Thank you for being here today. Nearly 3 years ago, my office exposed what I called at the time a stunning failure of government. I stand by that statement. For several years leading up to 2023, criminals executed a massive and sprawling fraud scheme that targeted Arizona's American Indian Health Plan, part of our state's Medicaid program. This fraud metastasized for years until we exposed it. Since that announcement in May 2023, the criminal division of my office, specifically the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit, has worked tirelessly on countless cases to hold criminals responsible for the harm that they caused to vulnerable people in our state and to taxpayers. Today we are announcing a conviction in one of the 140 indictments brought by this office in the past 3 years. Rita Anago, a nurse practitioner, operated TUSA Integrated Clinic and served as the behavioral health professional for as many as 10 to 15 other behavioral health facilities, many of which have since been suspended or terminated. But what her clinic was actually engaged in was a systematic pattern of fraudulent billing, submitted claims for services never provided, including to children, incarcerated individuals, and deceased individuals, while specifically targeting Native Americans. Anago's scheme deprived legitimate Medicaid beneficiaries of critical resources, and by exploiting an already vulnerable population, helped fuel Arizona's large-scale behavioral health crisis. She was previously convicted, but in a separate federal case, and was ordered to pay $55 million in restitution to the state of Arizona. Last week, she was sentenced to 3.5 years in prison in the state's case against her. She is awaiting sentencing in her federal case. But Ms. Anago, was just one of the fraudulent criminals that we have held accountable over the past 3 years. We have now convicted 41 individuals and entities as part of our ongoing investigation and crackdown on this fraud. And we expect additional high-profile sentencings and other ongoing cases in the coming weeks and months. We are not done. Prosecuting these crimes, however, is just one aspect of the work we have done to protect vulnerable communities and taxpayer dollars. As I shared with you 3 years ago, this fraud was allowed to metastasize largely because the people in charge prior to 2023 were asleep at the wheel. And we have the stats to prove it. During the period from 2021 to 2023, Access recorded approximately $3,114,163,966 in behavioral health billing in the American Indian Health Plan. Over $3 billion. Since my office launched its enforcement actions in 2023 to the present, that billing has dropped to approximately $230 million. That is a 92% decline. Back to pre-2021 levels, back to what we would normally expect given the size of Arizona's tribal population. And you have to conclude that nearly all of the increases between 2021 and 2023 must be attributed to fraud. How in the hell did this not ring major alarm bells in Governor Ducey's budget office is beyond me. How this did not spur more investigations, more aggressive investigations, and prosecutions by this and other prosecutorial agencies during the same time is also inexplicable. But we, when we came into office, did not bury our heads in the sand and pretend that nothing was happening. We investigated, we conducted undercover operations, and we infiltrated criminal networks to bring bad actors to justice. I am proud to say that this office has prosecuted the bulk of the cases in this fraud scheme over the past 3 years. Last year, this office received the Inspector General's Award for fighting fraud, waste, and abuse from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. That is Donald Trump's U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. And here we are. This is my team receiving that award. That's the pointer. Okay, thank you. Here's the award. This is the award that we got from Dr. Oz at the White House. This is the award that my criminal division chief, Nick Klingerman here, is holding along with our Mafuku team. Here it is, Dr. Oz, the Trump White House. I am so very proud of this office for fighting fraud, waste, and abuse. Arizona's Medicaid Fraud Control Unit, Mafuku, was the only unit nationwide selected for this honor in 2025, chosen from among 53 state and territorial programs. Other states have come to us to learn how these fraud schemes developed and how to effectively combat them in their states and combat these crimes. And to be clear, I welcome additional resources that may be provided to our state to continue to go after criminals. Arizona is a national leader in combating Medicaid fraud because we made it a priority. Let me repeat that. We made it a priority in this office the day that I set foot here. Day in, day out, building complex cases to hold the bad guys accountable. I am incredibly proud of our team and the work that we have done. It has meant long hours for them and difficult work. And these are folks who are not paid nearly enough because the Republicans in the legislature refuse to increase funding to this office. They like to talk a big game down there at the legislature, but when it comes to investing in the office that is doing the bulk of this work, they've proposed a 5% cut to our office. Let me repeat that. The Republicans in the legislature have proposed a 5% cut to the Attorney General's office, which is fighting waste, fraud, and abuse in the Medicaid program. As long as I'm Attorney General, the criminals who prey on the vulnerable and steal from taxpayers will have nowhere to hide. And in closing, I want to speak directly to everyone who has been harmed by this fraud. I know that no number of indictments or convictions or amount paid back in restitution can undo the pain and heartbreak and suffering caused by this scandal. But please know that we have heard your stories and we have seen the damage that has been done, and bringing justice to those accountable is what drives the work at my office every day, and we will not quit until this justice is done. Thank you, and I'd be happy to take some questions. Before we do, can we go back to the charts? I want to focus on these. Okay, so my friends, this chart I think very graphically depicts what happened. This right here in the middle, is this a pointer? I don't know. Okay, well anyway, this right here.
It's this button.
Okay, thanks. Okay.
No, it's
No, yeah.
Yeah, there it goes. But I don't know if it's showing up.
Okay. So right here in the middle, this is the 20, okay. You can see where the fraud starts to rise, right? Where the overbilling, the fraudulent billing starts to rise. This is the 2021 time period all the way through 2022, where it reaches its apex, where it reaches its crescendo. Again, under the Ducey administration. This is where our fraud crackdown begins. And you can see where we have brought it down to, back to pre-2020 levels. Can we go back to the codes slide? Okay. So this is very important. These are the most heavily defrauded Medicaid codes in the Indian healthcare program, okay? And you can see what happened from 2021 all the way through today. What happened is there was tremendous fraud in 2021, 2022, 2023, 2020, and 2023, and then declining in 2024 through today. And these codes, and maybe the next slide as well, gives you, and we can hand out these slides to you later. They have them, okay. The next, and by the way, these slides have never been seen before, so we are disclosing this for the first time. Code H0015 is the alcohol and or drug services intensive outpatient treatment program that operates at least 3 hours a day and at least 3 hours a week, or is based on individualized treatment plans. What happened was, you can see that it rose to $259 million to $187 million in 2022. And then we capped it in, I think, Danny, was it third quarter of 2023? Second quarter. We capped it in the second quarter of 2022. What happened? Virtually no fraud in this program in 2024 and beyond. Same situation with code H004. That's the Behavioral Health Counseling and Therapy code. Enormous fraud in 2022. Enormous fraud, obviously, in 2023 until we got to work on it, and then plummets in 2024 to $9 million, and now $5 million this year. Code H0018 is the Behavioral Health Short-Term Residential Code. Again, enormous amounts of money being spent on that code, being billed against that code by fraudulent providers in 2021, 2022, 2023. We bring it down every year until what you see there today. So that is a pretty good example. There's more codes. 80038, the self-help peer services code. Again, enormous amounts in 2021, 2022, plunging after we capped it and went after the fraud and got access to start making process improvements, plunging in 2024. And then you can see these other codes. 2014 is skills training and development. Massive amounts of billing against these codes in 2022, 2021, and then we brought it down in 2024 and beyond. So I wanted you all to see that. I thought it was very important to recap this, to give an update on where we are with fighting fraud in our behavioral health care system, especially as we are now right upon the 3-year anniversary of when the governor and I made our first press conference on this issue and commenced the crackdown on the fraud. That anniversary is on Saturday. So with that, I'll open it up. Howard?
Well, let's start off with this 5% cut. I assume this is the same 5% cut they're asking from all state agencies. Are you telling me that nowhere in, and I don't know how many millions of dollars I mean, it's sort of like cities say, well, if you cut this, people will die, firefighters will die. Why do you think you can't find 5%?
I'll tell you why. First of all, the legislature's budget spares other law enforcement agencies from that 5% cut. We are the premier law enforcement agency in the state of Arizona. I am the top law enforcement officer in the state of Arizona. I am the one prosecuting these fraud cases. We are the ones going after the Mexican drug cartels and prosecuting case after case after case against the Mexican drug cartels. My team is the one going after major fraud in the state of Arizona. My team are the ones, my agents, putting their lives on the line every single damn day of the year. And no, we cannot afford a 5% cut. And if these people down the street were really serious about fraud, they would not cut this agency, which is the one doing all of the waste, fraud, and abuse cases. 140 cases in my tenure alone. By the way, 5% is more than $1 million. Stacy.
I wonder if you could speak to, after you and the governor announced this crackdown in 2023, there also was some concern that legitimate providers were being kicked out. I wonder if you could speak to that. Have you tried to investigate anyone that you cleared for wrongdoing, or can you address those concerns?
Well, let me say this. Yeah, I mean, certainly there have been those who have said that. Senator Corrine Warner attacked us initially in her hearings for being too tough on these fraudsters. She said we were going after too many people. But we felt it was necessary to be aggressive because of the amount of fraud that was going on. And we have also been that we were the ones who provided $8 million from the money that we recovered to help $6 million, to help legitimate healthcare providers. And I know that we are also working with Access to every day identify the legitimate providers, and Access is working every day to make sure that legitimate providers are able to bill for the services that they do provide. And I might have Danny come up and answer that, or Nick. Nick, do you want to come up and answer the second part of that question, which I probably didn't fully address?
No. I think from the way that what we have found is we received a number of credible allegations of fraud from Access that we have opened for investigation in partnership with Access's OIG office. Some of those have been rescinded, but we have not had an outright acquittal or exoneration of any of the allegations. I think our focus has been the major fraud cases, prosecuting those, and then working with Access's quality management team to make sure we're getting legitimate treatment for people.
Could you say, could I ask, have you looked at providers that you found during the investigation didn't warrant charges? Like an exoneration maybe was too legal of a word for me to use, so.
The influx of cases is so large, we are focused on the largest fraud. There are smaller ones that quite frankly may have significant fraud that we will one day take a look at. We just cannot do it with our current resources right now.
No, let me sharpen that question, because it's an important question. You said you were focused on what you believe were the largest sources of fraud. Did you get through any of those investigations and conclude, no, these were not fraudulent activities?
No, we have not made it through an investigation and concluded that it was not fraudulent activity.
Attorney General, I assume you're familiar with the Christian Diaz case, the parent who was killed by a police officer in January. Last week, the attorney Chami
Yeah, so obviously, incredibly tragic situation, tragic case. I did see that the news coverage of it. I know about the decision that the county attorney made. I don't know whether it has been formally submitted to our office, and that's about all I can say about it right now. So it's certainly, I'm very aware of it, and I'm very aware of how the family feels about it. But we'll go check and see if it's been formally referred to us. Obviously, it went through the county attorney's process.
So if it's formally asked, would you take it?
I can't say that. We'd have to take a look at it. Yes.
Senator Warner alleged that there were new whistleblower evidence of Medicaid fraud, and that she referred some documents to your office. I just want to ask your response to that, and if you had received those documents.
Yeah, and we're going to pass out some. I guess Senator Werner wasn't aware that we might be willing to pass out the evidence of her lying on this issue, but here's what I would say about Senator Werner. She is a liar, and she is a dumb one at that. She emailed my office last week and said she needed to meet with investigators on an urgent matter Monday morning, May 11th, this past Monday. My criminal division chief, you just heard from him, Nick Klingerman, and members of the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit met her Monday morning, precisely when she asked for us to be there. And she said she had received whistleblower complaints about potential fraud occurring. My team thanked her, took the information, and immediately checked with the FBI. They already had an open investigation into the individuals and entities Ms. Werner had received the tip on. That is how it normally goes. As cooperating agencies, my office cooperates closely and works closely with the FBI on some of these cases. We have divvied up a number of these Medicaid fraud cases. We have taken the vast majority of these Medicaid fraud cases here in my office. I can talk more about that split, but we told Ms. Werner that this case had gone to the FBI, and told her that the FBI had agreed to take the new evidence and add it to their ongoing investigation. That, again, is the way that the system is supposed to work. She was grateful and thankful to my agents when they visited her. But she turned this into a bullshit political attack last night, because that's all Republicans like Werner know how to do. And we have the emails and the email paper trail to show it. We just handed you all the emails between my office and Corrine Werner about this issue. So she criticized this office for not seizing enough assets in these cases. Well, let me make a point here. It was under Governor Doug Ducey that the legislature, led by people like Warren Peterson, significantly curtailed the ability of prosecutors to seize assets in criminal cases, like the ones we're talking about today. House Bill 2810, passed in 2021, changed RICO laws to require a conviction before the state is able to seize assets. So in the real world, that means that criminals get to use the money they stole to pay for their legal defense and attorney's fees. Ask any prosecutor in the state of Arizona how this has affected their ability to fight fraud, and they will all tell you what I am telling you. Not only did the Ducey administration and the Republicans in the legislature sit by and do nothing while this massive fraud scheme and scandal was happening under their noses, they also kneecapped the prosecutor's ability to go after it. That's about as pro-fraud as you can get.
Wait a second here. I understood that debate. I've been following the whole RICO thing now for decades. justify, I mean, it's sort of like you file charges against me because you think I've done something wrong, you freeze my assets, you would say, we think that somehow that Howie's Capital Media Service is the fruit of illegal activity, and you kneecap my ability to defend myself. Isn't that guilt, assuming guilt before any sort of trial?
Well, obviously you agree with Warren Peterson and the criminals that that they should have access to all of their ill-begotten gains. But it's also not fair to the state and the people of Arizona that these criminals have access to assets, massive amounts of assets, by the way, that we are seizing to then hire high-priced defendants and get and go against us. And let me just add one last thing. By the way, the feds don't have the same problem. They get to seize the assets and they do that and keep it before conviction. This bill and Warren Peterson kneecapped prosecutors in the fight against criminals by making it so we have to hold these assets for years until we get a conviction, okay? And as that is happening, those assets are depreciating in value, right? So the assets are depreciating and depreciating and depreciating while the criminals get to use it in their defense and continue to get access to it.
But it's all based on your assumption that you're making the assumption that because you as the Attorney General say these are ill-gotten assets, we get to freeze them. You're basically being judge, jury, and executioner before a trial has occurred.
I mean, I'm going to let Nick come up and talk about this because he's also been dealing with this on a day.
Come on, you're the elected.
No, Howie, I just gave you my answer, okay? I gave you my answer. It's pretty clear what happened. It's pretty clear that the Republicans kneecapped RICO. And let me tell you something, we need to make RICO great again. So here's Nick Clearman.
Harry, you know that we are forfeiting assets with due process, and you would have due process in court to defend against the forfeiture. Adding the criminal conviction just delays that ultimate forfeiture. My team's ready to move right now to forfeit assets that we cannot because we are waiting for the criminal case. It's in front of a court. That's due process. We're not the judge, jury, and executioner on that.
But you've frozen the assets, so how do I hire my attorney?
Well, let me tell you the assets that we freeze in these cases. You have people with no other income who have defrauded millions of dollars from the state that we can't trace untainted money to them, and yet we still have to, under this bill, turn it over. We are giving stolen money to criminals for defense.
I mean, we'll have that debate all day long, and I think it's important that the state of Arizona understand what the Republican legislature did to our ability as prosecutors to go after the bad guys. They talk a big game.
The Democrats who voted for that bill?
I disagree with them too. You know, I call it like I see it, but anyway, okay. Anybody else right here?
Yeah, so yesterday it was announced that you issued a cease and desist letter to the owners of Pit Stop RV Park. What is kind of the status of that? And I guess can you speak to how dangerous the actions of the RV park owners is?
Yeah, I mean, this is really important. RV park owners, mobile home park owners, apartment owners have an obligation to keep the electricity and air conditioning on. This is a fundamental obligation that they have. They cannot put Arizonans' lives in danger. And that is what we believe was happening at this particular park in Quartzsite. And so it's my understanding, so we issued a cease and desist letter saying, you are right now violating the RV park landlord law and the Arizona Consumer Fraud Act, and it's my understanding that the power is back on right now, and I'm very, very grateful for that, but we are going to continue. I want to send a message to landlords out there. As the summer months are upon us, you are not going to get away with putting your renters in harm's way or potentially leading to the deaths of your renters. This is really, really important. over here and then.
Execution scheduled for next week. I wanted to ask if you or anyone in your office will be attending and just how you feel generally on the state of our protocols and procedures.
Yeah, I will be attending. I believe that it's my obligation as the Attorney General to attend executions. I am the statutory individual who is responsible for selecting who is executed and subject to the death penalty, or is executed off of the list of people who have exhausted their remedies. Look, I believe that we have developed in this office, unlike my predecessors, a very thoughtful and well-reasoned methodology for how to choose the next person to be executed off of the list of people who have exhausted their remedies. And we look at factors like cruelty, we look at factors like whether children were murdered, we look at factors like whether police officers were murdered in the line of duty by these individuals. We look at the heinousness of the crime. This particular individual killed a person using styrofoam and gasoline, and obviously extremely heinous. And so that's why I made this selection, and we will continue to enforce the law in the state of Arizona, which is that we have the death penalty. Back here, yeah.
I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on the settlement with Greystar, what they did to consumers, and how much tenants might be getting back?
The junk fees settlement, yeah. So we did just participate in a settlement along with, I believe, the FTC against Greystar, which is one of the largest landlords and apartment complex owners in the country. Certainly an entity that has a lot of apartments in the state of Arizona. They were engaging in what we allege to be junk fees against their renters, making the renters pay for things that should not have been a part of, the overall package. I don't know if we have an exact number. I believe it's more than $1 million coming back to the state of Arizona and to renters. So we'll try to get more finely honed numbers for you as soon as we can.
I'm curious if you saw this morning the governor announced a new AI initiative to go after fraud within Access. What do you think of the timing of that announcement a couple hours before your press conference?
No, I think it's great. I mean, it's actually a program that we recommended to her and to Access.
When was that?
Like in the last year or so, probably. Is that right, guys? No, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Yeah, I mean, we've been. It's one of that. Look, I mean, it's a significant program that took a while to procure, but it's definitely one of the numerous recommendations that we. Sorry, guys, I hope I didn't screw that up for somebody. It's one of the numerous recommendations. Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. This
That's
is.
okay. They didn't want to hear you anyway.
This is the list of recommendations that our Mafuku team issued to Access when we came into office. And one of those recommendations was to implement a system, an AI-like system that would flag fraud automatically. So Access needed a better computer system. They had a computer system that is 40 years old, and there's a number of other things. I mean, the reforms are not finished, but again, this is a legislature that doesn't care about fraud. If they really cared about fraud, they would be providing the resources that Access needs to make these improvements in the program. Now, that being said, we have been able to do a lot with the tools that we have in this office and in partnership with Access's OIG, Vanessa Templeman, who has done a fantastic job helping us root out this fraud, and then obviously being aggressive on shutting down the codes and also being aggressive on prosecuting individuals and entities. So it's been a combination of things.
Speaking of the governor, how is it going to nail her down for an interview on the Sunshine Residential Homes case?
What I'm going to say is I don't have any updates for you on that issue.
Let me
Sorry.
come back, if I may, to 2810. First of all, I know you like singling out Warren Peterson because he may be your foe, but that was sponsored actually by Travis Grantham.
Well, he was a co-sponsor on it.
And so were a whole bunch of other people. Second of all, the bill passed the House 57-2.
Yeah.
So what do you know that dozens of other lawmakers of both parties don't know that makes you right and them wrong?
I think we have now years of experience after the passage of that bill that demonstrates that it is doing nothing but help criminals in the state of Arizona. That bill was passed in 2020, I believe? 2021. We have now 5 years of experience as the top law enforcement and prosecutorial office in the state of Arizona, demonstrating that the way they gutted RICO is hampering our ability to go after criminals and fraudsters. And my guys have done an extraordinary job, regardless of this gutting of RICO. But it is a problem, and we need to fix it. And if you ask any prosecutor in the state of Arizona, they will agree with me on that.
Well, duh, but that's prosecutors. So the question is, you happen to know a few lawmakers. Have you
Yeah.
actually asked any lawmaker to repeal this?
Oh yeah, we've talked with many lawmakers about this, and I've talked to many
nobody
prosecutors.
sponsored it?
I don't know if we have not yet. I don't think it's been
So you've
proposed.
talked to them.
Well, yeah, but obviously it's going to be something that we want to work on, and it will definitely be something that I try to get passed over the next 5 years, because I plan on being here for 5 years. And I think it's important. So we've had a lot of other things we're working on too. Bizarrely, we even worked with Senator Werner on a bill related to access fraud, where, let me get the details of that bill, but we worked with Werner last year to pass a law that requires providers to keep their medical records. That was a really, really important bill that she helped us with. We actually wrote it for her, and we passed it. She was a constructive part of dealing with Medicaid fraud back then. Apparently not anymore.
5 years?
Yeah, 5 years of experience. I think it's kind of a weird coalition of the far right and the far left that doesn't like RICO. And I just disagree with it. We need to come together as a state and pass common sense laws that allow us to go after criminals.
I was asking about you being here 5 years.
Oh, okay. No, I mean, I was talking about the 5 years of experience, but yeah, I mean, hopefully we'll be here a lot longer so that we can work on these issues. Any other?
General,
Yes.
how are you?
Good to see you.
Good to see you. As you know, it's campaign time, right? And
I get this. So they say.
Because
Apparently, Howie's
at the end of
sensitive.
the day, well, at the end of the day, you're speaking to the voters at the end of the day. It's not to us only. Why I'm asking you this is like the 5% you were mentioning earlier, you alluded to earlier. Do you think that was a political job bid? And the second thing, so while you roll in, is regarding the lawsuits against Trump, because I get a lot of questions, because they don't see the news every day, they're not followers, and they always say she's wasting tax dollars in Arizona.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on those one? I know you win in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
But they want to hear it from you.
We're winning 80% of those lawsuits that we are filing against federal overreach. And those 41 lawsuits have now saved Arizona $1.5 billion, and I think that's a conservative estimate. That means that we saved AmeriCorps, we saved Head Start in Arizona, we saved Meals on Wheels. The federal government wanted to cut Meals on Wheels. We saved funding for our university system, we saved our libraries in Arizona. We won the tariffs lawsuit, which is a $1,500 a year tax on every Arizonan. So I'm going to continue to fight for Arizonans wherever I have to. What was your first question?
The
Oh.
first was about the 5%.
Oh.
Do you think it's a political net job?
I don't know. I mean, I don't understand.
It's just the way it smelled. You know,
Yeah,
so-
it kind of smells that way, but I don't know why you would cut the state's top law enforcement office 5% when you claim that you care about going after fraud, waste, and abuse.
Thank you, General.
I have a quick one,
Yeah,
sorry,
sure.
on another topic. I'm sure you saw the Auditor General's report on the opioid settlement funds. What is your office doing? Do you have any recourse for that money that went to the Department of Corrections and then was spent somewhere?
Yeah. I have a response to that, Stacy.
It's here on page 47.
You should just read through all those notes up there.
Yeah, all of those. Look, I mean, I guess I don't know where my notes were, but I'll just tell you how I feel about it. Look, I hate to say I told you so. We warned the legislature and frankly the governor 3 years ago, or 2 years ago, sorry. We warned the legislature, the Republicans in the legislature and the governor 2 years ago that they were violating the One Arizona opioid settlement agreements by sweeping tens of millions of dollars into the state prison system for basically backfilling the budget deficit. We now have a report from the legislature's own Auditor General confirming that she was not able to find any proof that they have properly spent the opioid funding. And yet, in both, I think, the legislature's budget and the governor's budget, they have proposed again to sweep another $40 million. In total, I think this would be something like $150 million potentially misspent by the legislature and the executive branch. That is totally unacceptable. And here's why I'm so passionate about this. It's because people are losing their lives over the opioid crisis and fentanyl. And, Arizona, unlike most states, Arizona's opioid deaths and overdoses are actually still going up. Across the rest of the country, opioid overdoses and deaths are going down. Why? I believe it's because the state legislature, led again by people like Warren Peterson and Steve Montenegro, decided to sweep that money to backfill a budget deficit instead of properly spending it in communities that desperately need it. I have traveled all across the state of Arizona, and I have talked to communities that are desperate for detox centers. They're desperate for more Narcan. They're desperate for more treatment options that they can't provide. The state has the money to do that. But what did the state do? What did this legislature do? They backfilled a budget deficit that they didn't have the guts to come up with the money properly for. So they stole the state's share of the opioid funding and they dumped it in the prison system. That is an affront to every Arizonan, and it needs to come to an end.
Let me ask you though, so that was tested in court and the court said the legislature could do that, but my question
Well,
is...
no. What the court said was it did not have enough evidence yet that the money was being improperly spent.
Okay, which gets back to my original question.
Okay.
Which is now that
What
we
do
have
we-
the Auditor General report, what will you do? Can you take action because of that?
Stacy, what I would say is we are very actively looking at that question right now. And I am going to do everything in my power as the Attorney General of this state to save people's lives and to make sure that this opioid funding, which again comes from companies like Cardinal Health and the Purdue Sackler family and CVS and all of the pharmaceutical companies, is properly spent to repair the damage that they did to the state of Arizona.
So you're prepared to sue if you decide, I know you're actively looking, both the governor and the legislature since she signed off on this?
I mean, I'm going to do whatever I have to do, Howie. All right, thank you guys. I appreciate it.